Guys, gals, whomever it is that might be listening, this is potentially one of the most important videos that I've ever done. With the state of modern gaming being at the bottom of the ocean, with no signs of ever washing back up onto the riverbed for us to properly enjoy, and us being Borderlands fans, today we're here to focus on Gearbox Software, developing studio of the massive franchise. They've had the highs of Snoop Dogg blunts.
Can I get a picture with you?
Any plans for the holidays?
Let me get a photo. Can I get a picture?
Oh, here we go. Here we go. Hey, you know, about to hit this.
Fuck fast. Don't be
Yeah, for real. Set up.
Hey, I love y'all. Enjoy that blunt, cuz.
Hey.
All the way up to the mids that make us forget how to hit the piece, so you just start, well, literally hitting it.
Is that tank glass?
Leading the series into a steep decline. And while they've done well in picking up smaller studios like Hopoo Games, I believe it's called, who develops the Risk of Rain series, it seems that their local cash cow, Borderlands, has started to grow stale in the mainstream light. Is this because it's been completely milk dry? Well, not necessarily yet. But before it is, Gearbox has to listen. So what does Hellfire mean when he says that? It's pretty self-explanatory and easy to explain, and I went a little bit into it in a previous video called Borderlands Must Go Back to Basics. But with Borderlands now hitting an all-time low in terms of interest and search, I asked you all how you were feeling about the current Borderlands games, and more specifically, if you were bored or burnt out of them. And yeah, my dumbass botched the message on this poll pretty bad.
Hey pal, you just blowing from Stupid Town?
But only around half of you guys actually voted that you are playing the Borderlands games, meaning that we are in a pretty scary place right now, where more people are actually watching videos about the franchise than they are playing it, with a lot of you either burned out altogether or playing on the rare occasion, which is just not a good sight for Gearbox, considering this has always been one of the best franchises for longevity in its gameplay, graphics that age beautifully, with endless possibilities. It's never not been a good purchase. Until it wasn't. You see, not only has the latest game under the IP, New Tales from the Borderlands, completely shit the bed in terms of scores and reactions across the board, but the new debuting franchise known as Tiny Tina's Wonderlands didn't exactly wow fans either, with it being heavily criticized for lacking in-game, performance issues on consoles, mixed with some absolutely horrendous DLC. Safe to say that it was far from hitting the mark when it comes to accomplishments, which this game was also abandoned just shortly after release, with apparently only a few developers left to do the quote-unquote PLCs. We can only hope that this was them moving more developers over to Borderlands 4, as it's heavily speculated to have started development around 2021 and 2022. While we already know it's confirmed to be in the works, we just don't know the exact time that it was started developing. While we don't know exactly for sure, it could have even been in development for longer. What I do know is that we need to get back to trying to appease the fans. Drop as many DLCs as you want for the game. Just make it worth our time and money spent. I've probably been the most critical and meticulous about this series here on YouTube. Not because I hate it and I want it to fail like some people think. I'm just not a fan of Gearbox anymore because of how they've pushed a large part of the community to become content. If Gearbox can't listen to the fans that are still around, then I don't know how they expect to cater to a new audience at the same time. When your biggest creator in the scene, Jolts, who has a great working relationship with the community, can't stand to play the new games himself. And I'm not here to shit talk the man either. To be fair, Jolts has harbored a great community of its own, which, you know, hats off to him. I'm glad someone can be that successful on the Borderlands games after all of these years. But I point him out because if he only plays BL4 for a couple of months and then dips out, What's that going to mean for the game? Well, just like with the third, it loses a big asset, and this doesn't just apply to him either. It goes for everyone, which is the players losing interest and dwindling off of the game yet again, which, yes, does happen naturally in every game's life cycle after the launch. But typically Borderlands games, as I have mentioned in many videos in the past, have managed to get a lot more longevity than other games. So if it isn't worth more than a short look from yourself or a lot of creators, it could fall right on its face as another massive disaster, which is what we all do not want to happen. We want you to listen to the pleas and wants of the community, then adapt and evolve around that formula with all of the feedback over the years. I view video games as this other approach to art inside of media, if that makes any sense. And Borderlands is the one franchise that I can't stand to see neglected. I want to see Gearbox prove me wrong and actually shock us with a great game with the 4th installment. And if you're at all familiar with me or you've seen any of my videos, I just don't have faith that they will. And if it's a great game, I'll be one of the first ones to tell you that I was wrong. The reason for today's video is to say that Gearbox's back is up against the wall. With the recent projects that I discussed in yesterday's video, as the more I've peeled back the layers of the franchise and the future of it, it's become obvious to everyone that the widespread appeal and money are clearly favored over just creating a good game. And a part of this comes down to the hunger being gone. The times of scratching to make the next big game and make a name for themselves is over. The first 2 games already did that. And yeah, a lot of that team that was involved with those 2 games aren't even involved with Gearbox anymore. But that doesn't mean that some of the current development team hasn't played the original games or seen videos about them. And if that happens to be you, please watch this video right here. I will leave it in the description and on the end screen. Because if you just stick by at least some of those points made in that very short and to the point video with no joke cuts or anything of the sort, you can have a killer game on your hands. This wasn't just to promote that video either. I say this as a lot of the things the Borderlands fans want are already known to you at this point. But out of everything, what is one thing that Borderlands 4 has to include from previous games that would be an absolute deal breaker for you if it wasn't included? If there isn't any, then let me know what you think of this video down in the comments below. Because another solid creator in the space, Drea FPS, made a video titled "We Don't Matter" just here recently, which also isn't the only reason that I made this video here today, but it's one of them, because I sadly have to agree. Gearbox doesn't need us, and they don't care about what us diehard fans think. Like I was during the early days of the franchise's birth, I was a kid, and when it comes to today, in the future, there is going to be some other children out there who grow up on Borderlands 4, and they don't even know it yet. For their sake, and for ours, I hope they get the same feeling that we did with Borderlands 4. But as long as they like it, it doesn't really matter, because people likely will like the game regardless. So even if I or what anyone else says doesn't matter to Gearbox in the long run, there are still people paid by the company to watch YouTube videos and keep tabs on what's happening. And the reason I say this is that just because it may seem like our voices aren't being heard, you never know if this video might be one of the ones that they see. I'll be tweeting it to them on Twitter, and you can follow me there for updates as well. Until then, I love you all to death, and fuck you, Gearbox.